Okay, good evening everybody and welcome to this meeting of the General Purposes Committee. I'm Councillor James Flanagan, Chair of this committee. Before we go into the agenda, a safety announcement. There is no fire alarm planned for this evening. Should the alarm sound, please leave via the nearest available emergency exit. Two of the closest exits are through the glass door behind you to my left and through the double doors onto the riverside behind you. Please muster at Café des Amis. Members of the public are welcome to make their own recordings of the meeting using whatever non-disruptive methods they think are suitable. This meeting is being minuted, recorded and will be uploaded to the Council's website. The Westgate Garden gates on the riverside are locked, so members of the public must leave the Guildhall by the side exit behind the glass door. Okay, and with that, we'll go straight into the agenda. Item number 1, apologies for absence.
We have no apologies for absence, Chair.
Thank you. Item number 2, substitute members.
And no substitute councillors. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3, declarations of interest by members or officers. Do we have any declarations? Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I'll just declare, and I think some other members of the committee may have a similar declaration. We have one member of the public speaking this evening, who I know, and I'm sure others may be in the same bracket as well.
Yes, I know 2 of the people who may be speaking this evening.
Ditto, yes.
I think we'll take that
also Whitstable
as one
resident. Yep. I'm new to declare. I live in Whitstable. Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much. Item 4, public participation. There is one public speaker for the meeting who will be heard directly before the relevant item, which is item 6, the Community Governance Review, which we'll come on to shortly. Item number 5, before we come to that, terms of reference. Could I invite Matthew Archer, Head of Corporate Governance, or Tricia, our Corporate Services Director, to give an introduction and update us on the terms of reference for the General Purposes Committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Very briefly, on terms of reference for general purposes, this is an item that we have for the first meeting of each committee, so we thought we ought to have it for this one as well. General purposes doesn't meet very often, has to be said. Didn't meet at all last year. And then we've got 2 reports on one agenda, so you know they're like buses really, the reports for general purposes. It has 3 main purposes. One is related to HR matters, so any health and safety at work policies or any serious incidents that we might have that would need to be reported to a council committee would come here. It also deals with any employee appeals to do with terms of employment or similar, and also any disciplinary matters related to statutory officers. So it has a number of HR functions. Elections is the second theme, and you have 2 election-based items on your agenda today. One related to parish councils and the other related to the electoral arrangements. That's why we're here today. It also is the committee that would appoint your returning officer, should that ever need to be done. And some items related to fees are generally delegated to officers, but can be discussed here as well. So our election arrangements generally would come here. And then the third element is a sort of a miscellaneous category. So various sort of standing orders or any serious maladministration cases, they would come here. And rather charmingly, it also deals with any matter not assigned to any other committee which relates to a council function. So if we can't find a home for it, it will come here. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Does anybody have any questions on that at all? All good? Okay, thank you. So item number 6, Community Governance Review in the unparished area of Whitstable. We have one public speaker who will be heard first at the start of this item. Could I invite Bernadette Fisher to come forward, please? Just need to press the on button. Yeah. Good evening, Bernadette. You have 3 minutes. Over to you.
Thank you. I'm a member of the Town Council group of CT5 People's Forum, which is the group behind the petition. Thank you for agreeing to carry out the community governance review. We feel that democracy in CT5 would be better served with the Town Council and have had the people, organisation and determination to get this far. That's our main purpose. The work that you can see on our website and our success in the petition attest to that. We've been heartened by our dialogue with local people, over 95% of whom have supported the petition when approached. They've generally heard about our campaign, and some even remember the old council with affection. Social media has been helpful, but we found that most people of all ages prefer to talk and to sign a piece of paper. We're asking that you approach this process with enthusiasm and determination, even though you've got so much to do as a new council. We'll help by getting the word out both directly and via the many local groups that we've been working with, and we'll organise gatherings and debate. I and others in this room know that the last CGR was carried out with care and dedication by all involved, even though the response numbers were disappointing. But the biggest disappointment was the fact that its conclusions were basically overturned by a decision of this council about 2 years later. Please don't allow that to happen again. Create something that exists in itself and cannot be undone by you or your successors. So a bit of detail on the CGR. We've raised the timescale. It took about a year, the last one. We recognise that we've asked for elections in 2025 and that you probably haven't got that long. But hopefully you won't feel too hurried. And I think the main thing is to find creative ways to get people to respond. It's hard, we know that, but there is something that you're working with that's already happened. And if you wonder about town councils, go to Faversham or any of the other places on the Kent coast that have got them. Look at what they're doing, looking how their councils are making brilliant plans on things like walking and cycling, how they then find out how to get funding, and they can get it accessing money that a council like this one can't get. See how it feels. We also know that many of you have similar visions as Faversham does for your towns. So did I as a councillor here. And the town council would work with you to achieve those plans. Please help make this happen. Our towns deserve it and CT5 wants it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we open the discussion, I'm going to ask Matthew Archer to introduce a report which you can find on pages 6 to 22 of tonight's agenda. Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. So, as the Speaker said, we've received a valid petition for a CGR for a town council in Whitstable. To be valid, it needs to be signed by 7.5% of the population for the area, of the electorate, for the area defined. So the target for that was 1,763. And they comfortably exceeded that in terms of the number of signatures, and the number of valid signatures was 1,797. So they reached their threshold. That's different from the CGR that we ran 4 or 5 years ago that was referred to. That was one that was done at the behest of the council. We did that to ourselves, so that wasn't responding to a petition. That was because periodically it's something that every council is expected to do, generally every 10 to 15 years. As a council, we are responsible for deciding parish boundaries. A town council has the same powers as a parish, but operates in an urban area. So in terms of what it is, that's the entity. And the last review that we did, although that did take a year, that included all of the parishes and the urban areas. So it was on a slightly different scale to this one in terms of its breadth and complexity. CGRs are normally done as a 2-stage process, which I've described in the report. That's what we're proposing here. So stage one would be a very open question in the consultation. Should Whitstable have a town council? Sort of yes, no, or not sure. And please set out your reasons why. So that people would then have the ability to consider their responses, set out their rationale, and you would then be able to see in response the reasons why people are supporting or opposing that idea. The functions of a town council vary quite significantly from one to another, so there is no sort of one size fits all. So we would talk in general terms about what a town council has the powers to do, what it might do, but it also depends to some extent on the relationship that it has with the other tiers of local government in its area. So its relationship with us as the City Council and with the County Council as well. And although the consultation will focus on a binary choice of do you want a town council or not, the review will be required to consider other alternative options. We won't give lots of weight to those because this is a review in response to a petition, but nonetheless the conclusions must take that into account as well. Ultimately, the review outcome must reflect the interests and the identities of the community and be effective and convenient. They are our tests. The area highlighted in the report is the unparished area of Whitstable. The eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed that I identified the wards at the top that were affected, and I omitted Chesfield, for which I apologise. It's been spotted both by the eagle-eyed speakers and also our ward councillor, so I do apologise for that. But I was looking at the parished area of Chesfield, which is of course different from the ward of Chesfield. As a reminder, we have the ward boundary review taking place separately, but also concurrently with this CGR. That's being run by the Boundary Commission for England, not by us. Their findings, which we expect in the summer, will inform the findings of this review. And it's desirable, where possible, to have coterminosity between parish boundaries, parish/town council boundaries, and ward boundaries wherever possible. So we would want to have the outcome of that review to inform this one as part of our work. The timetable in Appendix C was designed with a view to completing the review in time to plan for elections in May 2025 if a town council were to be created. If we went for an extended period, the review would likely take a year and conclude at the council meeting in January 25, and I have doubts whether there would be enough time then to create what's needed in order to form the parish council in time for a town council in time for a May 25 election. I mean, to give one example of that, all of the parishes submit their precept to us at the end of November. So there's quite a lot that goes on behind the scenes in terms of their financial planning for the next year. So what we're trying to do is give, if we wanted to go ahead and if there was agreement for a town council in the end, we want to give it the best chance of a May 25 start, although there is the option to review the timetable as we go and extend it if we need to. Has to be completed within 12 months, but it may affect the active start date. Tonight, you're being asked to recommend the terms of reference to Council on the 4th of January. The report also recommends that we form an advisory group, and the political complexion of that is set out in the report, and that advisory group will consider what recommendations we put to the committee in response to the consultation. And it also sets out a consultation plan in Appendix F, which proposes 2 public engagement meetings, one of the venues, the South Quay Shed, unfortunately isn't available for use at the moment. So we will be looking to do one at the Sea Salter Christian Centre and one in an alternative venue, potentially the Umbrella Centre or Swale Cliff Community Centre. We're deliberately trying to target areas where we can get a broad and mixed demographic, if we can. And that would be supported as well by leaflets in the town and website and social media publicity. And we would anticipate most of the responses coming in electronically. Thank you.
Matthew, thank you very much. So before we open the debate, to kick off the debate, I need to propose the recommendation as a starting point for the discussion. And the recommendation to Council is, number one, that a community governance review be conducted in accordance with the Local Government and Public Involvement in Health Act 2007, and the timetable and terms of reference set out in the appendices to this report be approved. Secondly, that the head of corporate governance, in consultation with the head of paid service, be authorised to take all necessary steps in relation to the review. And thirdly, that a task and finish advisory group be appointed to consider the review and make recommendations to the Council, comprising 7 councillors, 3 from the Labour Group, 2 from the Liberal Democrat Group, 1 from the Conservative Group, and 1 from the Green Party Group. Do I have a seconder for that recommendation, please?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Brady. So that kicks off the discussion. Would anybody like to comment? Councillor Jeanette Stockley.
Thank you very much. Just listening to Matthew there, is there a reason why the benchmark is 7% for instigating this? Because it just seems to me that maybe if only 7% have said that they want it, that's potentially over 90% that possibly don't. I don't know. And then moving on, so that's one question, the why 7%. 2, how is it, what's the criteria with the consultation if the majority who actually attend the consultation don't want it? How is that measured, and will it not happen then? Or if the majority want it, it will obviously go ahead. How is that measured? That's my question, please.
Thank you. The 7.5% is set out in legislation. So it's the threshold to trigger the review. So it's not in of itself any measure of what it does is it tells you that there is a sufficient proportion of the electorate that would like to have a review. It doesn't tell you anything more than that. And it's petitioning in favour of, in this case, in favour of a town council. Sometimes you can get a petition that actually wants to abolish a town or parish council, so it can be either. In terms of the criteria, I think that's why you need an advisory group to have a look at the consultation comments, because it's not solely about the numbers. The numbers obviously are part of the sort of criteria and equation, but actually there might be other things. It's the thing that I was talking about around effective and convenient governance, whether there is a sense of sort of community cohesion around the petition request, and whether the council believes that that is the most sensible way forward. So without a town council, we deliver the services the way we do now. With a town council, you look at what that might deliver for you and decide if that's something that you would like to have in your district.
Thank you, Matthew. So Councillor Smith and then Councillor Old.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I know you said that the public consultation events would be likely to be in Sea Salter and Swale Cliff. I'd like to ask your reasoning for that. Also, do we have, and I was going to ask Karen actually about this, do we have data on how many people signed the petition from the wards?
So I think in response to your first question, we've looked at where would be the most suitable venues, and we wanted to try and get a mix of views from different demographics within the population, both in relation to sort of age and earnings, and really just trying to get a broad mix, so that hopefully we get something that is representative of the area as a whole. Because I'm aware that some of the issues that might come up are around, you know, cost of living, and it's an additional cost to local residents. So value for money then becomes a consideration. We want to make sure that we are holding events near the areas where those sorts of issues might be a factor or might not. They might still think that actually, no, that delivers good value for money for me. I don't want to predetermine anything, so we are just picking our venues really with that in mind. In relation to who signed, did you want to answer that? Yes, please do.
Okay, so from the petition, obviously everyone that signed the petition would have given their address and postcode, so it would be possible to analyse that. But I would have thought that when the consultation goes out, when the responses come back from that, it would be more useful to analyse that rather than the initial petition that's triggered the review.
Thank you. Can I ask just a supplementary on that?
Yeah, sure.
I know that Dargate and Yorklets have been included in because they're part of Sea Salter Ward, but do you think they're part of a town council? I'm not. I mean, it almost feels like it could need a separate consultation. Yeah.
That's precisely the sort of question you might explore as part of the review. When the petition is put together, one of the requirements is that they have to define the area that they wish to petition for. And one of the early discussions that we had with the group was around interest around petitioning for the whole CT5 area, which is a postcode and not necessarily very coterminous to any of our parliamentary boundaries. So I advised that actually something pretty close to the CT5 area would be the unparished area of Whitstable. So it was recommended that we run with that, and the group were happy to go along with that. However, it is entirely possible to come up with an alternative boundary if it's felt, for example, that that's too broad and doesn't necessarily meet the criteria that I've outlined previously. So it's a starting point.
Thank you, Matthew. Councillor Auld.
Apologies for what is going to be a rather nerdy technical point. Page 8 of the report, in the third paragraph, says the threshold for the electorate of the area, which comprises the 4 district wards of Sea Salter, Gorrell, Tankerton and Swalcliffe, would be 1,763. We've already said at the beginning that actually the electorate that's under consideration, the defined area on the map, is bigger than the 4 wards. Can we be absolutely clear that the figure of 1,763 is taken on the basis of the defined area electorate and not on the basis of the 4 wards? Because if it's on the 4 wards and the threshold is reached, that's okay. That's one reason. If it's not including the South Tankerton area, then I wonder if the threshold's been reached. Can you just confirm that for me, please?
Thank you. Yes, I can confirm that the area that we've checked the petition against is the area on the map. So it would cover all of the areas for the review.
It's a repeat of the same error. I blame the report writer.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Stockley.
Thank you very much, Chair. When we go out to consultation, I'm very interested in how this will be presented, because obviously, as you've alluded to, there is a cost to each and every member household within that region, should it be decided a town council is appropriate. And how do we generate the interest? Because I was on the last governance review, and I think the response, you will know better than I, but I think it was 0.2% or something, wasn't it? It was tiny. So, you know, we do need to get a good picture, and I fear, my concern is that apathy might rule the day, and we'll end up with a town council possibly or not. You know, I accept that Whitstable is different to Herne Bay, is different to Canterbury, but we are only talking about Whitstable today. It just concerns me that we really need to make sure the people's interest is spiked, and they do realise that if they don't respond, they may end up with a town council, whether they want it or not. And looking at certain town councils parish councils in our area, which are basically legally the same, their opportunities to raise funds are considerable, and you have no option to opt out. Once you're in it, you're in it. The only option is to move. So, you know, it is important that we try and I know you will try, but it's getting the message out, which has proved very difficult in the past. And I was wondering how much this consultation is going to cost the council, which obviously is another factor that, knowing full well we haven't got a large pot for these things, but, you know, it may not be relevant at this point. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, in relation to public interest, we'll do what we can. I mean, I think it's maybe the difference between 5 years ago and now is you know, social media and so on is more mature now. I think more people can access it, so hopefully our reach will be as good as it can be. I think one other difference is with the last review, we were spreading ourselves quite thin in terms of having to review the whole area. At least we are focused on one smaller area now. We have campaigners who will be out and about publicising it and raising awareness, and we may get other people who are perhaps concerned and might raise their own campaign arguing for something completely different. We don't know. I think our role is to obviously just be objective, give people the facts, and try and help them to make up their own mind. Obviously, in the end, it's up to them whether they choose to respond.
Can I just come back, Chair? Just briefly, obviously the cost I alluded to varies from each parish, brackets town council. How will we be able to inform people of an average, if you will, that currently, you know, varies, I believe, from about £58 to whatever? Thank you.
Yes, I do think it's important to try and give people an idea. I've gone in the report and I think we were proposing to do similar with the consultation, gone with a range of between £60 and £80, which seems to be reflective of a number of town councils, and I think reflects also the publicity that the campaign group actually have gone out with as well. So just in terms of it being a fair representation, that seemed reasonable.
Thank you, Matthew. I'll go Councillor Buckman and then back to Councillor Old.
Yeah, just a couple of things about the venues that you were talking about. I think there's All Saints Church on Church Street. That would be another venue because that is, you know, in the middle and nearer the top. So people aren't going to go there and then they have to walk back up the hill and not come out. And then you were saying it's quite general and broad of what town councils can and cannot do. But because it is that broad, then it's very hard for residents to make a decision because they don't know what they cannot do or what they can do. So it's sort of to address that more so you have a better balanced choice. And, you know, if I go to one parish council and there's never many people on the council, so I don't know whether attracting councillors in the first place to be on a town council, is going to be an issue. And do town councils ever get monitored? You know, if you're failing the town within X amount of years, do you then can you then look again at it and say, well, actually, you're better off as you were? Thanks.
Lots of questions there. On the venue, thank you. That's noted. I'll take that back as another option. On the question of what a town council does, we will include in the literature what a typical town council might do, which will list some of the powers that parish councils have by default that you would expect. And in addition to that, it will set out some of the things that it might do, and that will be reflective of what the campaign group literature has also said, just to try and reflect some of the views from the local area in terms of the additional things that it might do working with partner councils, for example. So I think we'll try and be as clear as we can, both in our literature and in the presentations. One of the other ideas that we had was that we will ask a member of the Kent Association of Local Councils to come along. And obviously they represent all parish and town councils in Kent. And they would be able to give a really, hopefully a broad view of what town councils do in different areas and what that might look like in Whitstable. So they would be able to speak with an objective voice. In terms of attracting councillors, that's a challenge obviously for all of you at political level. Not all parish or town councils are political, so that's one point to make. Actually, at the parish level, it tends to be less so. The town councils, I think, is a real mix of people who are politically active or affiliated and those who are not. It will be the same process in terms of advertising for people who wish to stand, and there will be elections in the normal way. So once people are there, if they then choose to step away, then it's the same process that we have for all the other parish councils, where they can either petition for an election or they can co-opt in.
Just one quick one. Who pays for like the advertising and the elections in the future going forward? Is it the town council pay for their own elections? Is it? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. The town council are recharged for the elections.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to also pick up on one of the points that Councillor Buckman was asking about, sort of regulation and that sort of thing. I mean, parish and town councils are quite different. They're creature to the other parts of local government in that, you know, as Matthew was saying, there's a whole range of services they can provide, but there's no statutory services they have to provide. So whereas with district councils, there's services we have to provide to our residents, and the same with the county council, with a town and parish council, it's entirely their choice which services they do or don't provide. And that means they look, as you're saying, they look very different. They can do virtually nothing, or they can do a really wide range of things. And they can do anything in between. So they can very much tailor to their local area and local needs and local desires in terms of the services they provide. So it's very difficult to talk about a typical town council because there just isn't a typical one, I guess. And I think Matthew's idea about bringing Calc in to give a talk is really good. In terms of regulation, there's only two things that I can think of. One, they have to have their accounts audited annually, but the level of audit depends, externally audited, and the level of audit depends on the size of the parish, I think, the extent of that. And in terms of councillor conduct, Jan Geiler, our monitoring officer, covers town and parish councils as well. So if someone has a complaint about a town or parish councillor, they would come to Jan Geiler, and she would investigate through our processes. But I don't think there's any other regulation that would apply to them.
Thank you. Matthew, did you want to come back on that? Yep.
Yes, if that's okay. Just your final question about what if everyone thinks this has been a terrible mistake. people can petition for the abolition of a town council or a parish council, and then we would go through exactly the same process to decide whether it should remain or not. So that's that. And I missed your question, Councillor Stockley, about cost. We haven't put a number on it. I have just set out in the financial implications that there will be some costs attached in terms of hall hires and the like, in terms of direct costs, plus obviously the staff time that goes into, checking the signatures for validation, organising the consultation, attending the consultation, doing all of the analysis. It's a bread and butter part of our role that we are occasionally asked to do, but not all the time, and we just have to make the capacity for it.
Thank you. So I've got several speakers lined up, but first Councillor Old and then Councillor Jeanette Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. And for me, one of the powerful arguments in favour of a town council is the one that's advanced about if there was a unitary authority, having a town council would preserve local democracy. So if one of my residents were to ask me, what's the state of play on unitary authorities, how should I reply?
Yeah, Tricia, you can have a go at that one, please. Yeah.
Gosh, if I knew that. There is nothing but murkiness, I would say. There's nothing formally active in terms of unitary authorities. I think if you look at local government over the last few years, the trend has been where there's been really serious financial difficulties. So look at Northamptonshire. What happened there resulted in the abolition of the county and the districts and the creation of unitaries. Other places have actively pursued moving to unitaries. I think that's Bournemouth, Christchurch, Poole and Dorset councils were set up as unitaries as a result of that. But it's very patchwork. It's very much based on individual need and desire. So there's no national agenda to move to unitaries as far as I'm aware.
Thank you. Councillor Jeanette Stockley.
Thank you again. Just building on your point there about the elected councillors for a town council. We do know that there are parish councils around where they have difficulty in anyone coming forward to want us to stand as a councillor for their parish. Many councillors have been co-opted because they haven't found anybody. Many people don't actually, they want a town council or a parish council, but they don't actually want to do anything on it. So some of these councillors I know have been a councillor for decades. How is it up to us as a council to make sure that there is an election each, however often, year, biannually, 4 years? And that what do we do if there are insufficient people coming forward for this? Because that's one of my big worries about a parish or a town council, is that we have the same people doing it and they're all mates together. Maybe they're not very democratic, I fear. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so in terms of who would come forward for election, so you're quite right in that some parish councils, there aren't enough and it's not contested, so they're elected uncontested. Something that we could look to include in the second part of the consultation, if it's looking like we're setting up a town council, is whether you would be interested in standing if there was a town council, to generate an idea, to get people thinking about that. Anything else?
Matthew, did you want to come in?
Just to say that once established, then it would operate in exactly the same way as a parish council. So if there wasn't a petition for an election, then it would remain with those standing, carrying on without election, wouldn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, so if you get vacancies and they're advertised and an election isn't requested, then it's down to the parish council to co-opt, and that's a matter for the parish council, not for us to deal with.
Thank you. Next on my list, Councillor Ian Stockley.
Thank you, Chair. It's like a double act. On the last review, I came across a lady we interviewed. She will remain nameless. She had been a parish councillor for 30 years. She'd never stood for election. My concern is that town councils and parish councils are they have the ability to raise money through precepts. And that is obviously a bill that the residents will pick up. And I fear that a lot of residents, they look at a parish council and they think they sort out, I don't know, dog mess or whatever. They really don't engage with them. So consequently, you can wake up one day and find you've just bought a new village hall for £2.3 million. And that's going to be on your precept for the next 20 odd years. There's also the SIL, which I believe it's currently around 15% of the SIL will go directly to a town or parish council. And if that town or parish council has its own town plan, then that goes up to 25%. You know, we can be looking at substantial amounts of money into the millions. So, you know, we really do need the governance that Jeanette has alluded to is very undemocratic at the moment. And I'd stand a chance of upsetting a lot of parish councillors, but they do not, I don't know, you know full well what percentage of our parish councils had an election the last time an election was called. It's very small. And the main problem is they have to fund it. So they take the view that if they don't have an election, it doesn't cost them anything, they just carry on. So I am very concerned about the democratic process of town and parish councils, and we have no say in this. It's set. We can't change it. So it's just telling people what they're voting for, basically. But yeah, thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. Both of my questions have just been preempted, but I do want to, can I just ask about item 5? There are 3 options set out, if you could talk to those, and at what point, if amendments are required or wanted, when that would enter into the process.
Sorry, my computer's locked up. Great timing. Yes, so option 1, agree in the terms of reference, timetable and the plan. So yeah, recommended. Suggesting amendments to the terms of reference and timetable, I think that alludes to some of the points introduced by the speaker in relation to both timetable and the plan that we've put together, which is our interpretation of what we think the review should comprise of. But it's for the committee to decide whether it agrees with that or whether it wants to recommend any changes to it. The third one about whether to expand the terms of reference to include other areas on a proactive basis, that's just making the point that we have the power, if we wish, to instigate our own governance review. It doesn't have to be just in response to the petition. So there was talk once upon a time that you know we might look again at a broader review, but I think the steer that we have at the moment is when there is some evidence by the petition in this case that there is an appetite for a review, then we will respond to it. And actually, we just have to be mindful of capacity, as we've talked about, and our ability to actually cope with more than one review at a time. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. And just to be clear, the recommendations that I mentioned at the start are in line with option 1. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chair. others have mentioned, it's like really important that we reach out to deprived areas, and like elections, consultations are habit forming. So those who usually engage in consultations will, but we really need to seek out those who don't, because the cost implications will affect them more than others. So have we thought about engaging with schools so we can talk to parents as maybe a learning thing in civic duty along those lines? Are we contacting local businesses? Are we putting posters up in meeting areas with QR codes to links? I don't think 2 areas in the centre of Whitstable and Sea Salter is enough to get to those hard to reach people. So yeah, I think it's really important that we think differently to how we would usually do this. I don't think social media is just enough to be able to do that. And it's really important that we speak to ward councillors who go out most days knocking on doors and speaking to people to find out what's the best way to do this. Very, very important. Thank you.
They're all entirely fair points. I think the issue that we have is our capacity to actually do what might on the face of it be, I was going to call it the gold-plated approach. That sounds disrespectful to what you just said, and I don't mean it to at all. But unfortunately, I think with the resources that we have available to us, we have to cut our cloth. And the plan that you have before you is what we think is manageable within the resources that we have available. If we wanted to do more, then we would probably have to take something away and have a think about that. But it's our ability to deliver more. I don't want to overpromise. I think that's the concern.
Thank you, Matthew. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor
Yeah, just
Brady?
supplementary. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Completely understand resources are limited. Emails to schools to see if they can contact parents through their mailing lists and see if they can then utilise not their resources because schools are underfunded, but maybe there's something a teacher might spark an interest to do something along those lines. If we are we printing anything? If we are printing anything, we know how to put QR codes on things. Easiest way of engagement. I know there are individuals that don't know how to do that, but some do. It's just another option in the armoury to be able to reach out to as many people as possible. Thank you.
We will be printing some material, so we can look at the distribution of that and perhaps target some other areas of distribution other than the sort of primary things in the centre of the town. I will talk to our consultation team about whether we can contact schools. They have quite an extensive stakeholder list, so if there is something like that available that we could do, then yes, by all means, we're open to ideas. But what I don't want to do, obviously, is commit people to things that they then can't deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, hi, more questions. And picking up on what Jeanette and Ian were talking about, the long-term parish councillor problem that seems to, was a revelation to me. I thought they had to be elected regularly, but obviously not. I noticed that it mentions in the report that you would be looking at warding for a town council. What would happen if there is no one standing in those wards and people are just co-opted on and they're all co-opted from the same part of CT5, which is a big area, you know, and it's certainly got a much bigger population than the parish has. And, you know, the inequality that would put across a bigger district could be problematic.
I'll start, and Catherine, do come in if there's something I don't say. Again, it's one of the things that you might consider as part of the review. Warding might depend on the size of the area, based on your earlier conversation around whether the defined area is too big. If you had a smaller area, maybe you wouldn't need warding. If you have a very large area, maybe you would want warding to ensure that you've got representation from a broad geographical area within the town council. It also helps sometimes in terms of the electoral arrangements if things are warded, but I'll let Catherine add to that.
Thank you. I'm not sure I've got much more to add to that, other than if it is warded, then if there's a vacancy occurs, then the election would take place just within that ward rather than the whole area. So that's another consideration.
So it's back up my question is, if there isn't anybody who's coming forward for that ward, because we do know it's difficult to get people to stand, what I'm concerned about is that my ward that I cover is Sea Salter, that it could end up being unrepresented on a town council that have got a lot of SIL money from developments in Sea Salter that they're spending elsewhere. It's a real, it's a real concern, this.
Thank you. Councillor Brady, did you have one more question?
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly on that. So obviously we learned from other town councils near us in Kent. So these concerns, do we find those other town councils have those problems to recruit people in the wards? Are we having too much emphasis on this concern if those other town councils have multiple people vying for a role in an election, and we've got confidence that that might be replicated in the CT5 area?
I think that's one we'd have to take away, and perhaps we could ask Calc if they have any information about how many co-options there are at town council level compared to parish.
Thank you, Chair. I think just to say very quickly, I just think that it goes back really to town and parish councils are each very individual and very different, and it would depend on the flavour of the town and how people in the town feel about it. I mean, I think from my experience of working in an area where there were town councils and parish councils, I think the town councils probably fared a bit better than the parishes in terms of interest and probably had more contested elections. But we will check out with Calc. But it goes back to that very individual nature of them, and there isn't really a template for a town council or a parish council.
Thank you, Tricia. Looking around, I don't see any other lights on. So I'm going to start drawing this to a close now, this particular item. Before I do, just from the chair and with my ward councillor cap on, notwithstanding the fact that resources are limited, and we've mentioned about 2 public meetings, but I wonder if some consideration could be given to at least a third. We've got public meetings on either side of Whitstable. As we've said already, geographically, that's a big spread. But I'm just saying, Councillor Buckman mentioned the venue earlier, which I think would work pretty well if it was available, but to have at least a third meeting I just think the priorities of residents in different parts of Whitstable, particularly from one end to the other, may be very different. So it could be valuable from that point of view to at least identify that as part of the review process. That would be my request from the chair. Good. Thank you. Matthew.
Okay, we'll take that one away, and if you wanted to make that a recommendation from this committee, then we'll build that into the referral to council.
Right, that means we have to take a separate vote on that, actually. I think so. I proposed that. I think Councillor Smith seconded that.
Yeah, Councillor Smith second.
Okay, so we'll add that to the recommendation that I mentioned at the start that was seconded by Councillor Brady. So we'll amend that to include a request for a third meeting.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll move to the vote. With your buttons, you've heard the recommendation proposed by myself, seconded by Councillor Brady. Please vote now. Thank you. That is unanimous for the recommendation. So that now goes forward to, I think it's the council meeting on the 4th of January. Can I thank members of the public and our speaker? Thank you very much. You are very welcome to stay and listen to the last item on the agenda. Please feel free to do so. Thank you very much. So we will move forward then to item 7, which is the polling district review. This is pages 23 to 40 of tonight's agenda. No public speakers on this particular item. We'll begin by hearing the report from Catherine Bescaby, who's our Electoral Services Manager. Catherine, over to you.
Thank you. This report presents the findings of the review that we've done recently for the polling districts. We're required to do this for parliamentary elections between the 1st of October and January 2025. Given the uncertainty about when the general election will be, the fact we've got Police and Crime Commissioner elections next year, and we also have a local government boundary review, which we'll be consulting next year as well. The decision was taken to do the review now to a more condensed timetable than we would usually do. So the report sets out the proposals, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Catherine. So once again, before we move to the discussion, so from the chair to recommend to council, 1, that the General Purposes Committee considers the proposal set out in section 4 and makes recommendations to council, and 2, that subject to incorporating the changes from one above, the General Purposes Committee recommends that council agrees the polling districts and places set out in Appendix 2. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Brady, thank you very much. Does anybody want to speak to that particular item? Councillor Edwards.
Yes, I mean, I don't think there's anything that can be done about it, but I'm not very happy with the fact that the voters who were voting in Querns Community Centre have now got to all go to Spring Lane. It's not a popular venue with people outside Spring Lane Estate. We were rather hoping that one of the community venues on the Taylor Wimpey site would be up and running soon. I mean, I guess it's not, so we can't do anything about it. So I'm not, you know, that's what you've got to do. It's the best option. I get that. I mean, Polo Farm is not so accessible. I don't think the parking's very good either there, is it? But you know, it's just not going to work as well for those people. It's not a natural home for them, if you like, natural place for them to visit or go. So my question only is, accepting the review as it stands now, if that community centre opens on the Taylor Wimpey site, and they are promising, well, they promised earlier in the summer that they would get that application in ASAP. We haven't seen it, and we do check, and we haven't seen it. I've just checked with Paul, actually, whether he's heard anything, because he was chasing it. Can we come back to you on this, or is there only a very specified timetable? If there was a better venue, sooner rather than later. I mean, it won't be that quick, because it's not, if we haven't got the planning application in, it's not about to be redesigned and refurbished, obviously, that quickly. It's just, timescales. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, this isn't set in stone, so if an alternative does come forward, then we're more than happy to look at that and to change it.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak to this item? Councillor Smith?
Sorry, I actually missed the whole consultation period going out. I think I got it mixed up with the boundary review, which we were looking at elsewhere. So apologies for that. I'm a sea salt. I represent Sea Salt Award. You know what my questions are going to be about. Is that it's a long way to our one polling station because we lost Age UK. Could we look at co-opting the nursery at Vulcan Road, possibly? Ideally, you'd want something on the top of the hill, because it's the people who live at the top of the hill who are least likely to walk to Sea Salt Christian Centre. They will drive, which isn't ideal, and shouldn't be what we're aiming at. I mean, it's a good, I think it's 1.5 miles to the polling station from sort of Longreach, Sherwood Drive area. So, and I know what the problems are. I have been pushing to try and get one put round Estuary View, which has been aimed at health and well-being. So we are trying as councillors to get an alternative, but we would also like, you know, to look at alternatives there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you happy that we look at that as part of the next review? Just because of timescales for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections that we've got coming up, because we will need to do a full-blown polling district review when we get the new ward boundaries in place.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who would like to raise any points? In which case then the recommendation has been made. We'll move to the vote. Please use your buttons now. Thank you, and that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 8, any other urgent business to be dealt with in public. There is no other business. Item 9, exclusion of the press and public. Not aware of any matters for which we have to exclude the press or public. And item 10, any other urgent business which falls under the exempt provisions of the Local Government Act 1972 or the Freedom of Information Act 2000 or both. None has been notified. So therefore, 8:02. I'll call the meeting to a close. Thank you to our members of the public who were here earlier, council officers and councillors. Wish you a safe journey home and a very merry